Hello, health champions. Today, I want to talk about what you need to know before you start a weight loss medication like Ozempic. And I've gotten tons and tons of questions, hundreds literally, where people are wondering about these weight loss drugs because they seem to work. So people say things like, I'm interested in knowing how this will affect my body. I'm a type 2 diabetic, but I had a GI reaction. Someone says, my doctor's pushing me to go on Ozempic. I'm refusing. Too many serious side effects and the weight comes right back when discontinued. I don't want to be a guinea pig. And then Beavis and Butthead says there are two ways to lose weight. One's called Wegovy and the other is called Ozempic. So these contain the active ingredient we're going to talk about today. Nothing else works and we are all living proof. Thank God modern medicine finally got something right. So did Beavis and Butthead get this right? We're going to talk about weight loss medications that contain something called semaglutide. And we're going to talk about the results people are getting, about the mechanism, because that's critical to understand what it does and what else it does. And because when we understand the mechanism, we can figure out if it's a good idea. Typical results based on data they've gathered are that after 1 year, 63% of people have lost at least 5% of their body weight, which means if you weighed 200 pounds or 200 kilos, whichever unit, you can do the math, you're down to 190, and 27% lost at least 10%, meaning you've gone from 200 to 180. So we would probably have to say that yes, this works. There are some benefits in terms of weight loss and, like we will talk about, also diabetes and insulin resistance. But does it work better than blank? That's the question. I think there are some people who can be helped by this, who have really stubborn weight where nothing else has worked, but does it work better than other things that we could do, such as fasting and low carb? Because it's very clear that a lot of people using this have never really seriously tried fasting or low carb. But then the question is, can you do this for a while and then get off? Is this something you do for 3 months or 6 months or a year and then you're done and your body has restored its balance and you can just go on with life? Also, does it keep working? If you do take it long term, do the effects stay the same or does it kind of taper off? But most importantly, even if it works, are there some consequences? The active component is called semaglutide, and that's what we call a GLP-1 agonist. An agonist works the same as an antagonist works the opposite. And GLP-1 stands for glucagon-like peptide 1. That's a hormone that the body makes itself. So this semaglutide works the same. It has the same effect as this GLP-1 agonist. And this is a hormone that the body releases at the end of a meal. So when we have eaten, we've given the body some resources, this is one way that the body recognizes, hey, we are full, we're satisfied. So it signals that to the body. It signals fullness, but it also signals that, hey, we got a bunch of food, let's release some insulin so we can take care of this food, so we can bring the blood sugar down and process it, get it into the cell and start some metabolic processes. So both of these are excellent for controlling type 2 diabetes because the insulin will bring down blood glucose. But when we signal fullness, we end up eating less. So even though it raises insulin, it actually works for weight loss and diabetes control. But we really have to understand a few more things that it does. It reduces the rate and amount of gastric emptying. So the food sits in the stomach for a long, long time. And this is part of why we don't just get the signal of fullness, but we feel full for a good bit longer. And this also has a lot to do with the side effects, which we'll come back to. It decreases gastric motility. So the stomach normally churns and mixes pretty much ongoing to mix the food with the digestive juices. And that's part of digestion, of breaking down the food and extracting nutrients. And furthermore, this GLP-1 reduces the acid secretion. So we're going to have less stomach acid. And we need to understand all these, and we'll go through these in detail. Now, these drugs have been called blockbuster drugs because they're some of the most popular drugs around. There's 60,000 prescriptions written every week for these, even though they're very, very expensive. And the reason is, of course, it works. And it increases insulin, it decreases blood glucose, and it decreases appetite. So this means that you can lose weight with no responsibility or with much less responsibility than you might otherwise have to. And for a lot of people, they continue to eat the standard American diet, lots of sugar, lots of processed food and grain and tons of carbs, and they still get results. So in other words, you can have your cake and eat it too. And what could be better than that? So of course, it's very popular. And I found a story, some people had shared their experience, and we're going to call them the Smiths, even though they were actually called something else in the article. They were very affluent, they were successful, but they rather pay attention to their careers than their health. They were in their 50s, they had type 2 diabetes, they were both overweight, and they said that because of Ozempic, they had changed their relationship to food. They had lost 15 pounds in several months' time, and the A1C had gotten very much under control from a pre-diabetic or diabetic range to a normal range. And the article quoted them saying things like, I can eat half a sandwich and be so full I need to stop. I'll put the other half away for later. They would say, hey, what's for dinner? And the answer would be, I don't care. Let's just have a few bites of cereal. And the husband would say things like, well, I won't follow a diet. I won't count carbs or watch the amount of sugar I eat. I just won't do those things. So here's the thing I want to point out, that they said they had changed their relationship to food, but in my mind, they hadn't changed anything. They had just taken a chemical, they had taken a medication that went in and interfered and simply blunted their response to food. They flattened their desire, but they hadn't learned anything. They hadn't really changed anything. They still ate the same stuff. Now, for some people, they still have success doing that. For other people, they have to take some other measures, such as exercise and some dietary changes on top of the medication. So here's a key point. This medication actually appears to help people with weight and diabetic markers, such as blood sugar and A1C. And that's a great thing. But blood sugar and insulin resistance is not everything there is about health. It's the majority of people have that problem, but because you reverse it doesn't mean you cover 100% of your health issues. We are a nation, a planet at this point, who is overfed and undernourished. And if you are nutrient deficient and you're eating 3,500 calories of depleted food, of nutrient deficient processed foods, which we do in the US on average, it's like 3,700 or something. And then you take a medication that suppresses your appetite, and now you eat 2,000 calories of nutrient deficient depleted food. How is that going to make you healthier? Yes, you're going to fix what your insulin resistance gets a little better, but are you getting healthier? Just because you fix one problem doesn't mean it's all gone. You solve one thing and you create several new ones. And if you fix the insulin resistance, that might take care of you. You might look much better in the next several months to a few years. But what happens after that? What happens over a few decades? So let's look a little bit further on if this is a good idea. And let's look at how normal physiology operates. So in your body, you have something called the autonomic nervous system. That's the part of your brain and nervous system that handles everything behind the scenes for you. It processes billions of bits of information every second, which is 1,000,000 times more than your conscious mind processes. So there's a tons of information that is processed on your behalf. Everything is fine-tuned and regulated. And the autonomic nervous system supervises your endocrine system, your hormones. And your hormones are they handle behavior and mood and so forth, but also there are hormones that affect your digestive system, like GLP-1 that we're talking about. And humans, just like every other animal on the planet, have certain needs. We need certain resources. And therefore, because of the need, our autonomic nervous system, our hormones, create a desire called appetite. And every animal on the planet go out to eat every day. They try to find something. It's not because they don't have anything better to do. It's because they need some resources. And then once we find something, now we start eating, and there's a whole slew of steps involved to get this process completed. We start chewing it, to breaking it down into smaller pieces. We release some saliva with enzymes to start breaking it down. Then we have gastric juices like acid, hydrochloric acid, that activate peptides that are enzymes that break down protein. Then, like we said, we have motility. First, the stomach starts churning and mixing, and then it starts moving through the digestive tract, and it completes the digestive process. And the stomach will empty, it will move things through at a certain rate. So it needs to be in the stomach for a certain amount of time, and when the body is done with that, with the churning and the digestive juices, then it moves it on out. And now the rest of the digestive system, the small intestine, the large intestine, can finish the absorption of the nutrients, and we can turn all these resources into energy and tissue, into new body parts. And I just want to emphasize that all of these steps have been in place in every mammal on the planet for eons. And there's nothing random about it. Every step has its purpose, and it's there to complete the process of getting resources into the body and assimilating them appropriately. And now we go add semaglutide, which will decrease the response of the autonomic nervous system. So the body still needs the same amount of resources, but we have no desire to go and acquire them. We don't care whether we get the resources or not. We're just not going to get hungry. Then this medication also reduces the gastric juices, which means that now we have less acid, and that acid acts as an immune barrier. If you ingest some bacteria, they're basically supposed to die in that acid vat. But if we don't make the juices, now we've lost at least part of that immune barrier. We also cannot digest proteins very well. The proteins that are supposed to become the building blocks, the tissues of the body, without the acid, we're not activating the pepsin, which starts breaking down protein. We reduce the motility. The stomach doesn't move and churn. It doesn't mix. It just sits there. So now, without that churning and mixing, we are losing an important aspect of digestion and breaking down that food. And the semaglutide also reduces the stomach emptying. So the food basically just sits there for a long, long time. And this has a lot to do with the side effects that they're observing. And these are pretty substantial. So it's not like 1 or 2% here and there that experience these side effects. About 20% of people will have nausea. And depending on the dose, if it's a higher dose, as much as 40% of people will get nauseous. We also have vomiting. 9% of people would vomit, and we have diarrhea in 8% of people. So these numbers are pretty substantial. But if you watch the headline lately, there's been some much more serious side effects, and that is called gastroparesis. And there are lots of people who report gastroparesis, which is basically a paralysis of the stomach. Not only does it move slowly or move a little bit, it stops altogether. They put food in there and it just sits there. And one lady reported that she went to a restaurant, she had one bite and started throwing up. And they took her to the emergency room and they checked out her stomach, and the food from the previous day was still in the stomach. That can't be good. And in other people, they find that even years later, after they have discontinued these drugs, some of these side effects still remain, that they still have gastroparesis, they still have vomiting years and years later. Now, no one really knows why some of these effects go on for a long, long time and why they might become even permanent. But I want to share something with you, a way that we want to think about these things, and we want to question the things that we're doing. And it has to do with half-life. So every hormone the body makes has a half-life. The body has a plan for this hormone. It's only supposed to last so long. And when we compare the body's own, the GLP-1, to the man-made version of the GLP-1, they're dramatically different. The body's version has a half-life of 2 minutes. That means after 2 minutes, only half of the initial release is there. After 4 minutes, 25% is left, and so forth. So after 10 minutes, the effect is mostly gone. So the body is planning for this to only work a very, very short time in terms of slowing down the secretion of stomach acid and gastric emptying and appetite suppression and so forth. But when we compare that to the man-made version, how many minutes would you think that the half-life is of that? Well, how about 1 week? That's a lot of minutes. So we have something where the body intended it to last a very short time, to basically gone in 10 minutes, and now we put something in that has a virtually permanent effect. So the appetite suppression and the gastric acid suppression and the slowing of the stomach, now we have something that is always there. And if we have something that suppresses function ongoing, that's obviously very, very different than the plan the body had in mind. And then they're giving you some helpful hints for managing these side effects, of course. So they say, eat bland food, eat low-fat foods that are low in fiber. Things like crackers, toast, and white rice. Yeah, that'll really solve the problem. So eating things that have even less nutrient, even less resources, how's that going to get you healthy? So this medication comes with a lot of side effects, but here's what we also need to understand about side effects. That when we use that word in our standard language, then it means an undesired effect that has resulted in a symptom, something that we notice, something manifest. But I want to try to give you another understanding of side effect, the way I look at it. So my definition is that a side effect is any disruption of normal physiology. That if the body normally has its way of doing things, we give it resources, it uses those resources, it has a plan, there's a mechanism for everything. Now, anything foreign, any medication, any chemical that we take that changes that balance is going to have a consequence or a side effect, whether we notice it or not. Now, a lot of people probably think that I am an anti-medication, which I'm not. I'm only against most of it, or rather the way most of it is being used. So I'm all for using medication for emergencies, where they can save life, where there is a crisis, where something has gone out of control, they can save lives. But we have to understand that most health problems are lifestyle problems. It's things that we have created ourselves, knowingly or unknowingly. And the only way to deal with a lifestyle problem is to make a lifestyle change. So a few more things about this semaglutide, that they say that rebound is common or even expected. So basically what that means is that over time there is a lessening effect. The body tries to defend itself against this chemical, so the appetite suppression might not be the same all the time. And also, more importantly, if you stop this medication, then you will start gaining weight again. The body will bounce right back unless you have made such powerful changes in your lifestyle that you control it with food and exercise and you eat real food. So basically, this is a lifetime medication. Once you get on it, expect it to go on forever pretty much. Also, a lot of people will still need to make lifestyle changes. Like we talked about before, some people can be lazy and keep eating garbage and get some results. But for a lot of people with stubborn weight, then they will still need to make lifestyle changes. Some other issues that they mention is that a lot of times this is covered by insurance and it's very expensive. So insurance may not be interested in covering this year after year after year, especially not without raising premiums. And if you pay this out of pocket, some of the numbers that I saw was like $1,000 a month. And it sometimes baffles me how incredibly intelligent the human species is. And yet we are clever enough to be really, really stupid. That we have completely parted ways with nature. We're the only species who have separated ourselves completely from nature to create artificial environments and artificial foods. And in doing that, we are basically creating all disease. The vast majority of the disease that we're suffering from today, we have created. And then we develop so-called healthcare systems, which are really sick care and symptom treatment systems. And we spend not a little bit of money, but virtually all the money we have left, trillions and trillions of dollars. And what are we doing? We're covering up and treating symptoms. We're not addressing root causes. We create disease and then we spend trillions in just treating the effects of that. And when we treat symptoms instead of root causes, of addressing root causes, we're allowing the problem to continue and we actually make it worse. But we all have different perspectives. And what I'm sharing here is just my perspective. I'm not pointing fingers or saying that anyone's doing anything wrong. You always have your choice. And you can either eat crap and take medications, and then from age 40 or 50 or so, then like a lot of people, you might develop fatigue and brain fog. You might get some chronic pain, maybe start developing poor sleep. You might have some reduced mobility. And like a lot of people, you start developing type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and neuropathy. So the majority of population will experience a reduced quality of life and be on multiple medications from age 40 or 50. This is your choice. There's nothing wrong with that. If that model works for you, if that's all the best that you want, then go for it. But you do have another choice, and that is to be a health champion. That's what I'm always talking about on this channel. And that means that you address the root cause. You understand that this body is only adapting to insult, that we're doing things through our lifestyle, that the world has changed more in 50 years than the previous 50,000. And if we understand what that impact is on the body, now we can start addressing root causes. We can start honoring and supporting our bodies and our physiology and start eating real food, which in my opinion, my experience, is low carb, high fat. And it doesn't mean everyone needs to be keto. It doesn't mean everyone needs to be extreme low carb, but it means fat is really healthy if we eat good fat. And most people are eating way, way, way too much carbohydrate, and nobody should have their diet based on carbohydrates and grains. And we have to eat food that has nutrients that provide the resources, and in doing that, we're going to create a balance, a natural balance between hunger and satiety. We have this delicate, infinite intelligence that can regulate these things if we give the body the right resources. And the next most important thing is to move the body on a regular basis. Your body is made for movement. It's what drives every physiological process. It drives the nervous system. You cannot have optimal health without regular movement. And by doing all of this for a period of time at the same time, now you can start living to your potential, which is going to be different for different people. We have been blessed to different degrees with a genetic blueprint, but you do this first and then you start looking elsewhere if you still need help controlling some symptoms. If you enjoyed this video, you're going to love that one. And if you truly want to master health by understanding how the body really works, make sure you subscribe, hit that bell, and turn on all the notifications so you never miss a life-saving video.